So thank you everybody for coming. Here in a second here, I'm going to introduce the Sheriff of Sutter County, Brandon Barnes, who's going to provide a statement in regards to the incident that happened at Lovey's Landing yesterday. After his statement, he will start at the right of the room and he will give an opportunity to ask questions. I do want to remind everybody this is still an active investigation, so he will be not able to answer a lot of questions, but he'll do the best he can. I will watch time. He is a busy man, and so we will have to cut this short. Do your best to answer the question, ask questions quickly. And from there, I'm going to introduce Sheriff Brandon Barnes.
Thank you, Undersheriff. Welcome. My name is Sutter County Sheriff Brandon Barnes. For our media partners in the room, I'll spell that. It's B-R-A-N-D-O-N, and the last name is B-A-R-N-E-S. Yesterday, there was a tragic death in the town of Meridian of an 11-year-old boy. So I've called this press conference here today to keep our community informed, but also to provide some context to the information that was being discussed on social media platforms. First, before we get started, I want to offer my condolences to the child's loved ones, to the community of Meridian, because I know that they've been deeply impacted by this child's death. I want to acknowledge my staff, who continue to work tirelessly on this investigation, all 3 divisions within the Sheriff's Department. I want to thank the Meridian Fire Department, the Sutter County District Attorney's Office, California Fish and Wildlife, and the California Department of Justice, all who came out to assist us with this investigation. On Sunday, January 5th, around 10 a.m., we received a call from the manager of the Lovey's Landing trailer park located just outside the town of Meridian along the Sacramento River. It was reported that there was a verbal altercation that was occurring between 2 of the residents of the park. Deputies responded, and they spoke to the mother of the deceased boy, who was identified as 44-year-old Megan Dixon. Spelling of her name is M-E-A-G-A-N, and the last name, Dixon, is D-I-X-O-N. Miss Dixon was described by witnesses at the scene as having some type of drug-induced or manic episode. Fire personnel had arrived on scene just prior to the arrival of the Sheriff's Department, and the fire department had located the child deceased inside the trailer, and it appeared as though the child had been deceased for several days. Our detectives worked in cooperation with the district attorney's office to obtain a search warrant for the property. During the investigation, there was evidence to suggest that the child had been smothered. At this time, I cannot go into specific details on what that evidence is, because obviously this is still an active and an ongoing investigation. The suspect in this case, Megan Dixon, has no real criminal history outside of a theft charge from about 20 years ago. She's lived at Lovey's Landing for about 3 years with her child and the child's stepfather. I want everyone to know that my detectives have spoken to the stepfather, and he is not a person of interest in this investigation, and we have information that suggests he's been out of town for several weeks visiting family. His name is not being released at this time out of respect for his privacy. An autopsy is being scheduled through the Placer County Morgue, who we contract with for services. So any official manner or cause of death will be pending the outcome of that autopsy, and then obviously we'll come back and provide information as that becomes available. Also during the investigation, there were 3 deceased dogs that were discovered on the property. 1 was actually in the trailer, and 2 more were located in a vehicle that was registered to Miss Dixon. This portion of the investigation is also ongoing, and the dogs were preserved until a post-mortem exam of the dogs can be performed to determine what their cause of death was. Ms. Dixon is currently being held in the Sutter County Jail on charges relating to homicide and child endangerment with a $1 million bail. Depending on the outcome of the investigation, there may be some additional charges that will be pending. So that's my official statement. With that, I'll be happy to answer whatever questions I can. Please keep in mind, as the Undersheriff had noted, this is an active and ongoing investigation. We're working in cooperation with the District Attorney's Office. Certain information we won't be able to disclose, and some of it we haven't discovered yet. So, but I'll do my best to answer your questions. So we'll start on the right side here.
Jake Goodrich, Sacramento.
Yes, sir.
Were there other kids either in the home or in danger in relation to this?
There were no other kids that we were made aware of. My understanding is that the 11-year-old child was the sole occupant of the trailer and lived there with his mother and his stepfather. Yeah. Yes, please.
Has the father of the child been taking questioning? What do we know about him at this point?
Sure. We've spoken to him. As I just stated, he's been out of town for several weeks. We do not believe him to be a person of interest in this. His name is being kept confidential at this time out of, his personal privacy.
But you said stepfather, so I didn't know that.
Yeah, the actual father, we have no information on. We don't believe, according to information we received from the stepdad, that the father has been an active participant in the child's life in many, many years. So there's no information to suggest that the biological father has had contact, and we're still working to identify who that might even be. Yes?
Were there any other reports of deputies or any other incidents at her trailer, at her home, involving the child, and was CPS ever called?
Yeah, so no information to suggest CPS has ever been called. Most of the history that we have from that particular trailer park was with her calling in as a reporting party. Again, her criminal history was very minor, just one theft that we discovered on her rap sheet from about 20 years ago. So by all accounts, she's lived there, and there's been no problems out in that particular part of the community. So you had, it looked like you had a question.
With ABC 10.
Yes.
What can you tell us about this young boy? Was he enrolled in school? Did he have friends in that community?
Sure. My understanding is, again, pretty limited information. The child was homeschooled. We're told that he might have been a high-functioning autistic child. That was based on reports from some of the neighbors in the area. They did say that he would come out and routinely play in the trailer park. One of the issues was they hadn't seen him in several days, which they thought was unusual, and that prompted them to try to make contact with the mother, which is what ultimately led to the call yesterday. Others? Yes, please.
With Fox 40 News, I just want to confirm the 911 call came from a resident in that area that was checking in.
Yep. My understanding was that it was a call that came from the manager of the complex who noted one of the residents arguing with Miss Dixon. Yes.
Can you describe that disturbance, at least what witnesses have said, how erratic or what did it really entail?
Sure, I don't have a lot of details on that. My understanding was there was a verbal dispute. Again, they went to kind of check on the welfare of the child because he hadn't been seen playing out and about in the park for several days, and that resulted in a verbal altercation with Miss Dixon. The manager observed that, called the sheriff's department. Fire personnel responded out there. They happened to do that as a matter of routine. Anytime there's a dispute like that, they got on scene and were able to go into the trailer and see that the boy had been deceased.
I mean, enough that they had to call 911, that it was that much of a problem?
Sure, if you're familiar with Lovey's Landing, it's a very quiet trailer park. There's not a lot of calls for service. It does make the news kind of annually because it is inside the levee. And so when we have the high waters come up, we have to turn the electricity off to the park, and that results in evacuations. So typically it'll make the news about once a year when we do evacuation notices. But outside of that, it's really a quiet community. We don't have any problems out there. Yes?
Sheriff, Tony Salazar, Fox 40. Do you guys know if there were any drugs found at the time you guys arrived?
I'm not aware of any drugs being found on the premises.
Can you give us his name, the little boy's name?
Yeah, we're not going to be able to disclose that. Obviously, it's a minor child, and we'll be working with the district attorney's office and through victim services to make sure that all the family members are notified, not just obviously the mother and the stepfather who we're aware of. So, yes.
What was that like for deputies? I mean, going into the RV, seeing something
Sure.
like this? Could you just provide?
No, that's a great question. So obviously in our profession, public safety in general, which would include fire services, ambulance services, we are routinely subjected to things that most people don't see on a normal basis. It's heart-wrenching. It really is. And if you're not equipped to deal with those stuffs both emotionally and physically, sometimes it can have a negative impact on you. So we go to great lengths at the Sheriff's Department to make sure that we're taking care of our staff. In fact, we did that this morning with the detectives that responded out there, just to check in on them, see how they're doing. We have a peer support group at the Sheriff's Department. We also have kind of a multi-disciplined approach to kind of debriefing these situations with counselors, and we'll be performing that with our staff probably later this week. We're in the process of scheduling that. And with that, we don't just do our staff, we invite everybody who responded out there to the scene to make sure that if they are in fact, troubled by something or they need additional services, we're providing that to them. So it's something we take very seriously. So I appreciate that question.
What's your message then to the community hearing this information about?
Yeah, I mean, the message started yesterday with us reaching out to several people out in the town of Meridian. It's, one, we're certainly saddened. An incident like this doesn't happen frequently, nor should it happen at all, quite frankly. It's just tragic that it did. Anytime you have something that impacts a small community like that, there's going to be challenges, whether it's the school district, even though this particular child was homeschooled, it still could be known to the community, right? So we've already spoke to the school superintendent and just doing everything we can to make sure that they know that we're doing all we can, and then not only with the investigation, but to support them as they grieve through this process as well. So, yes.
I forgot to say, I'm Michelle from KCRA.
Hi, Michelle. I recognize you.
Okay, well, but I wanted to ask about the mom.
Sure.
And the suspect and her demeanor, and do you believe that she was staying in this trailer for several days? He had been dead several days, and was this a drug-induced few days?
Sure.
And did she cooperate? Well, what was that like, arresting her?
Yeah, so, well, I can't speak for the deputies that were on the scene, but what I can tell you, what was relayed to me is that initially it was reported through some of the interviews that we did with neighbors that she was suffering from some type of what was described as a drug-induced or manic episode. And so, taking that in mind, obviously she's been interviewed by our staff. She hasn't really provided a lot in terms of an emotional response. But, our detectives are continuing to work with her to try to, get what information they can, so.
And she was cooperative?
Yeah, she was cooperative. Again, no real history outside of that one. There's nothing to suggest that there, is a history of mental disorder or anything like that we've come across. We have checked with neighboring agencies as well, just to kind of vet out some of that information. But at this time, there's nothing to suggest that, she's got a mental disorder.
Do you know when her first appearance will be with the judge?
I don't. I do know she's in on $1 million bill. I would imagine it would be within, 48 to 72 hours. So I'd have to speak with the district attorney to see when they'll be doing her arraignment.
Susanna, with
Yes.
that, with a quick question, I know you said still an ongoing investigation.
Yes.
Limited on the child in itself, but you said that there's evidence showing that the child was smothered.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, again, I want to be very careful about protecting the integrity of the investigation. What I will tell you is that there was a pillow within close proximity to the child. I can't go into a lot more detail as to why we think that particular item was used, but we do have evidence to suggest that a pillow was used.
So that's gonna be the last question. We kept it at 11:15. So thank you, everybody, for coming. I will tell you, folks, that as more come and more information we can provide, our PIO, Sheriff Headley, will be providing press releases and updating.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be working close with the district attorney's office on that as well, since it's now in their hands.
Yeah, sure. If I could say in closing, I mean, we're just a little over 24 hours from the time that we received the call. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And so, again, I just want to express how appreciative I am of my staff and everybody who's helping to support them, the allied agencies. And then also, again, just acknowledge what a tragedy this is to, the town of Meridian, that community, and Sutter County in general, because I happen to live in another city here in Sutter County, and even in that city, people were being impacted and calling me yesterday to not only offer their condolences, but, checking in on the welfare of our staff and saying how terrible that must have been. And they're right, it is terrible. And so my staff will continue to work on this and work to get it resolved in a professional and, dignified manner as we move forward. So, and as more information becomes available, certainly, the results of the autopsy, things like that, please reach out to Sierra, and she'll be able to provide updates as we go along. At this point, I don't anticipate the need for another formal event like this, but if that does develop, we'll certainly call everybody back and invite you back for that statement as well. Okay? All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.